Be not deceived. In other words, don't be tricked, don't be manipulated, or start thinking different than what I'm telling you. I'm not going to be mocked. God will not be mocked. Whatsoever a man soweth, so whatever you do, that's what you're going to receive. You do bad, you get bad. And, you know, the problem is uh, we've seen it coming, and I don't think anybody really understands the truth of it. We've seen promise keepers try to come and establish it. I've got a book that I'm going to encourage the men to get, because this is going to be the men's study. We're going to get a men's group going like the women, and it's called Stepping Up. And it's time the men stepped up in this country. If you're going to father a child, then you need to marry the woman you're going to father the child with, and you stick with them for life and raise your children. And there'll be some lessons coming out of that book that's going to be shared in the congregation. But that's what we're looking at this morning in the book of Ruth. Every human has both strengths and weaknesses. And unfortunately, we bring that baggage to all of our relationships. And usually in our marriage relationship, now Ruth and Naomi is not a marriage relationship that we're studying, but Ruth was married to Naomi's son. Well, Ruth's husband died along with Naomi's husband, and so the two women were together, and they were a family unit. They had to depend upon each other to make it, and so they stuck together. This is one of the main reasons that we're using this book, because it shows relationships and family relationships and how we should look at each other. But normally in a married couple's life, after a period of time, we treat each other like we're porcupines. You know, we'll be freezing to death, and we try to get warm and snuggle up, and we just prick each other with our needles, you know, and drive each other away. And you know how to push your spouse's buttons? Do you? Oh, come on, yes, you do. If you notice some of this stuff in your life, like you drive each other apart at times and you push each other's buttons, maybe you need to try to live a more virtuous life. Now, if you don't have a spouse and you're in the market for a spouse, these principles apply to you also. There's ways that you need to look. In virtual reality number 1 last week, we looked at your obedience to God's plan opens his provision for you. When you do what he wants you to do, God's going to make sure you have what you need to get it done. Now, the second virtuous reality that I want us to look at is be what you desire. Be what you desire. So what you desire out of your mate is what you need to be sowing in order to reap it. And when you attract what you desire, you know that, right? Some couples in the Bible that confirms this reality: Ahab and Jezebel. That was a wicked, evil couple, if there ever was one, wasn't there? And they were attracted to each other. Then we look at Joseph and Mary, a good couple, and they were attracted to each other. And you know, there was some red flags that was thrown up. If a man was to think as a man thinks, if Joseph would think as man thinks, he would have put Mary away, wouldn't he? You notice that these two examples married somebody of similar moral persuasion. Joseph was a righteous man, is why he didn't put Mary away. Mary was a righteous woman. That's why God chose her to have Jesus. And we're not suggesting that some people don't marry up or marry down morally, but what we're suggesting is a person of moral, questionable character is going to find one of like manner. Let's use an example of today's time. And I'm sorry, I don't remember the lady's name. The black lady that was the EMT that was shot and killed with her boyfriend, Miss Taylor. This man wasn't in trouble with the law just this time. He's been in trouble for many years with the law. They followed after him, and they didn't report all this in the media. You know, she was killed in the bed. No, she wasn't. She was standing next to her man. They heard the knock on the door. They would not open the door. When the police kicked the door down, he started shooting, and they returned fire. She was caught in the crossfire. The police officers did shoot her. But she was not in bed. She was not laying down. She was standing. She had made a decision to be, and I know a lot of people's getting in trouble for this, but she wanted to be with a thug. You make your bed with a thug, you might die with a thug. You know, and this is one of the reasons families are so important. Men need to be daddies and teach their children right from wrong, and there's consequences for your actions. I don't know. I think it was in that book there. I read about half of it last night. Man, that was a good book. This, I think it was Dennis Rainey, the author. Anyway, it was one of his stories. I don't know if it was his or somebody else's. Goes to say the boy was 12 years old, and he was the baby son, had 3 older sisters, and mom and dad and 3 sisters. Dad had told them this Saturday we're going to the house, and they had purchased a house that they were fixing to move into, and we're going to paint. And he put the girls downstairs painting, and him and the son went upstairs. Well, the son was up there, and he hated to paint then, and he hates to paint even to this day, he said. And he started thinking of all the things he could be doing on such a beautiful Saturday. And he knew that Daddy wasn't going to let him go play, but all he had to do was go to Mama, and Mama would take care of baby boy, baby son. And so he told Dad, I got to go to the bathroom, and went downstairs. And he started complaining to Mom. And he says this is one of those defining moments in life where he knew something had changed, and he couldn't quite put his finger on it until many years later. But he went downstairs, and so he was complaining to his mom. All his friends are out playing. He wants to go. And so Daddy started to come downstairs, and she called him by his full name and said, so-and-so, the son, is just a kid, and you should let him go out and play with his friends so we can get our work done. And he called her by her name and said, one day this boy will be a man and will have a wife and children to take care of. He needs to learn that there's responsibilities more than what he wants to do, of things that he has to do, and he's going upstairs to paint. And he said at that time he knew something had switched, because now Mama had turned Daddy loose to train him to be from a boy to a man. A woman cannot teach a boy how to be a man. Amen. That's why our families are falling apart. There's hard things. Women are soft, and that's not in a. We're thankful to God. Women are soft. All right. We like the woman to nurture us, especially our moms when we're kids and babies. You know, but then it comes a time where we're gonna have to face the real world. Mamas have to teach girls how to be women and ladies, and mothers, and good wives. Because, see, nobody has the inclination to do anything that discomforts their flesh. But that's what we have to be taught. You have to consider others before yourself, especially in a marriage relationship. And so to be what you desire and attract what you desire. One of the things I tell our young people that get married, if you want to be the queen, make him your king. If you want to be king, man, make her your queen. You're not going to be king without the queen. All right? And so we see that Ruth was what she desired, and she attracted what she desired. With that in mind, here's 3 characteristics of Ruth that were also true of Boaz. Look in chapter 2, verse 2 of Ruth. And Ruth the Moabitess said unto Naomi, Let me go to the field, and glean ears of corn after him, in whose sight I shall find grace. And she said unto her, Go, my daughter. Now, if you will, look down in verse 10. Then she fell on her face, and bowed herself to the ground, and said unto him, Why have I found grace in thine eyes, that thou shouldest take knowledge of me, seeing I am a stranger or a foreigner? Look on down in verse 13. Then she said, Let me find favor in thy sight, my Lord, for thou hast comforted me, for thou hast spoken friendly unto thine handmaid, though I be not like unto one of thine handmaids. And she was considerate of others. Ruth asked Naomi for permission. Now, she was a full-grown woman asking another woman, but you see the respect there of the elder from the younger, and she respected. Then when Boaz came out, she bowed down and said, Why have I found grace, seeing that I'm a foreigner? Why would you not pick one of the locals instead of me to glean in the field? And then in 13, she says, Let me find favor in thy sight, my Lord, for thou hast comforted me, and spoken friendly unto thy handmaiden. You know, she demonstrated honest goodness. 3 times in this chapter we find her exceptional respect for Naomi, and the way she treated others speak volumes about her character. She demonstrated honest goodness. In verse 2, she said, Please let me go. In verse 7, she demonstrates a strong work ethic. And she said, I pray you, let me glean and gather after the reapers among the sheaves. So she came and hath continued from the morning until now, that she tarried a little in the house. In other words, she didn't sit around and get just a little and stop. She was a hard worker, industrious. She demonstrated humility. She bowed with her face to the ground. And in verse 10, and with gratitude, verse 13 says, You've been so kind to me. In verse 14, Boaz said unto her, At mealtime come thou hither, and eat of the bread, and dip thy morsel in the vinegar. And she sat beside the reapers, and he reached over her parched corn, and she did eat, and was sufficed, and left. And verse 18, and she took it up and went into the city, and her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned, and she brought forth and gave to her that she had reserved after she was sufficed. I was looking, I thought it said in there, when she ate, she put back a part for her mother-in-law. And so when she saw her, she kept some back to give to her. In verse 17, an ephah of barley she had gleaned, which is about 26 quarts. And but all this stuff that we just talked about, the humility, the gratitude, compassion, Boaz demonstrated himself. If you'll go back and look, verse 4 of chapter 2, and behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem and said unto the reapers, The Lord be with you. And they answered, The Lord bless thee. Then said Boaz unto his servant that was set over the reapers, Whose damsel is this? But he greets them with the Lord, and and he cares for them. He looks over the people, and he had compassion, and he was with humility, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. Ruth expressed sincere devotion to God. You know, she said, "Your God will be my God." She left her God, her country, and followed Naomi, her mother-in-law, into Bethlehem. And another Ruth wrote a poem that God would give her a godly husband. And this is one of those stories just to throw alongside. And she wrote the virtues of the husband that she wanted, and this is what she desired. Her name was Ruth Bell. Y'all might know her as Billy Graham's wife. Be what you desire, and you tend to attract what you desire. Now, the second virtuous reality here is mutual respect is the seedbed from which love blossoms. And this is, I guess, the proper place to put, if you want to be king, make her queen. If you want to be the queen, make him the king. And those who believe the Bible demeans women haven't looked closely at the budding relationship between Boaz and Ruth. The one word that summarizes his treatment of Ruth is respect. How did Boaz show it? And how did he demonstrate the respect? In verse 10, then she fell on her face and bowed herself to the ground and said unto him, Why have I found grace in thy eyes? Thou shouldest take knowledge of me, seeing I am a stranger or a foreigner, a Moabite. And he noticed her strength rather than her weakness. Boaz was indifferent to the fact that she considered herself a foreigner. And in verse 11 and 12, and Boaz answered and said unto her, It hath fully been shown me all that thou hast done unto thy mother-in-law since the death of thine husband, and how thou hast left thy father and thy mother and the land of the nativity, and art come unto a people which thou knewest not there heretofore. The Lord recompense thy work, a full reward be given thee of the Lord God of Israel, under whose wings thou art come to trust. So he compliments her character rather than criticizing her condition. Why did she and her mother-in-law go to Bethlehem? They were poor. They were broke. They were out of everything. No food, no hope, no future. If you remember, Naomi said God had misdealt her a bad hand. She left full and came back empty. And we talked about that. That really wasn't true because she came back with someone that truly loved her, Ruth. And it was sold out to serving her. In verse 13, then she said, Let me find favor in thy sight, my Lord, for thou hast comforted me, that thou hast spoken friendly unto thy handmaiden. So, appreciate what they do for you. She was poor and he was rich, but Boaz saw past her condition. He saw her character. That's what he says. He says, I'm fully aware of what you've done for your mother-in-law. And in all honesty, when you have this type of virtue in your life, your reputation will precede you. People will take notice of you and they'll ask questions. Well, who is that person? And then your story will be told. What kind of story have you been living for the people to tell your story? One that you'd be proud of or one that you'd be ashamed of? Now, see, this is where it's really important. You know why those people are acting like they are in our society right now? not because of the devil necessarily. It's because they've not been taught better. They don't know any better. You know, there's lots of men that will ask other men how to raise children because they don't have a clue. Nobody's taught them, or they taught them wrongly. We need the man and the women to do the right thing and quit thinking. Society as a whole, and even we ourselves, act as if God owes us something or the world owes us something. We don't have heroes no more. You know, and the heroes should be our mom and our dad. Our first heroes should be mom and dad. I remember I had a lot of heroes when I was a little boy, but I remember my dad, I guess he was 26 years old. Would that be right? I was 5. How old was you when I was 5? 26. He took his shirt off a tree limb or something that fell down, and he was out in the front yard up on Sentinel chopping. Do you remember that? Your arms was brown from here down. But you had big arms and your blood veins was bulging where you was working, and I thought you looked just like Tarzan that day. One of my heroes. But you know, Dad, even though I love him and respect him, he was my hero, he wasn't perfect. He made mistakes raising me, made mistakes in his life. I've made mistakes in raising my children. When I was looking at some of the stuff that this book is talking about, I realized how short that I'd fell. But the thing is, my daddy was there. And he showed me how to be, and then he showed me some things that I knew I shouldn't be and I didn't want to be. And the funny thing is, my son was the same way. I know there's, especially my oldest son, there's things that he really hates about me and he'd rather not do at all. And that's some of the things he does. And it's like me with my dad, and I'm sure like with your dad, there's things that we try not to be, and we still are, because we are a product of our family, our mom and dad. And so when we look at the society that's fallen apart, and people act like they don't know what's right and what's wrong, most of the time it's because they really don't know, because they hadn't been taught. And Ruth, when Naomi was complaining so much about Ruth, she really had, and when I say complain about Ruth, just leave me alone. I don't have anything. You know, God took everything from me, and she still loved her and still stayed with her, loving her. And we're going to see that it pays a great reward for both of these ladies because of Ruth's faithfulness to Naomi and just her virtuous life. We see also Boaz, he appreciated what they did, and he showed courtesy to Ruth. Sit at the table. He didn't have to treat her so nicely. She was a foreigner, you know, and he was letting her already glean from the field. He invited her to the table. But it was out of respect for Ruth's kindness and courtesy to Naomi, his kin folk. He knew that Ruth had took care of Naomi and was there. Where was Naomi when Ruth was out there gleaning the grain? She was at the house. Well, I ain't going to pick enough for her too. She should be out here with me. That's how our society would act today, wouldn't it? Well, if she ain't going to be out here gleaning, I ain't gleaning that much. And she'd went and sit down in the house too. See how respect and stuff is? How the true difference in virtue? Virtue, you know, the higher ground, the morality, the right, doing what's right. Appreciate when people do kind things to you. Verse 15 and 16 of chapter 2, and when she was risen up to glean, Boaz commanded his young men, saying, let her glean even among the sheaves, and reproach her not. And let fall also some of the handfuls of purpose for her, and leave them, that she may glean them, and rebuke her not. See how it pays dividends to do the right thing? But it cost him something. Yeah. But guess what God's fixing to pay him back with? A fine wife. Right? Be not deceived. God will not be mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. Do kind things when possible. Show thoughtfulness. The third virtuous reality is genuine love patiently brings out the best in others. If you will, look in verse 17 and read along with me. So she gleaned in the field unto evening, and beat out what she had gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley. And she took it up and went into the city, and her mother-in-law saw that she had gleaned, and she brought forth and gave to her that she had reserved after she was sufficed. And her mother-in-law said unto her, where hast thou gleaned today? Where wroughtest thou? Blessed be he that did take knowledge of thee. And she showed her mother-in-law with whom she had wrought, and said, the man's name with whom I wrought today is Boaz. And Naomi said unto her daughter-in-law, blessed be he of the Lord, who hath not left off his kindness to the living and to the dead. And Naomi said unto her, the man is near of kin unto us, one of our next kinsmen. And Ruth the Moabite said, he said unto me also, that thou shalt keep fast by my young men until they have ended all my harvest. And Naomi said unto her, Ruth, daughter-in-law, it is good, my daughter, that thou goest out with his maidens, that thou meet thee not in the field in any other, not in any other field. So she kept fast by the maidens of Boaz to glean unto the end of barley harvest and of wheat harvest, and dwelt with her mother-in-law. You remember when they left because of lack of food and money to buy food, and he just happened in at the right time for the harvest. And now he's took special favor to Ruth and told the men to leave extra grain on the ground for her to pick up, and that she needs to come every day and be with his maidens and under his men's protection, and go not into any other field, because you're going to have plenty. This is setting them up for the winter season. So they'll have food to eat until next season. In verse 20, and Naomi said unto her daughter-in-law, blessed be he of the Lord, who hath not left off his kindness to the living and to the dead. And Naomi said unto her, the man is of near kin to us and our kinsman. Now go back to verse 20 of chapter 1, and what does it say there? And she said unto me, call me not Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty hath dealt very bitterly with me. See how our attitudes changed with Ruth sticking by our side. Where you go, I'll go. Your people be my people. Your God will be my God. She's loved her. She stayed with her. She went out into the field and gleaned. Naomi stayed back. And then here in chapter 2, verse 20, Naomi said unto her daughter-in-law, blessed be he of the Lord, who hath not left off his kindness to the living and to the dead. And Naomi said unto her, the man is near kin to us, one of our next kinsmen. So genuine love patiently brings out the best in others. The virtuous life of Ruth began a transformation of pain for Naomi, changing her pain to praise. It didn't happen overnight, but Ruth's patience paid off. And genuine love patiently brings out the best in others. What does it cost you to be kind? What does it cost you to be courteous, humble, and love like God does?
The song of invitation this morning will be page 58. God is calling the prodigal this morning. God is calling the prodigal, come without delay. Hear, oh, hear him calling, calling now for thee. Though you've wandered so far from his presence, come today. Hear his loving voice calling still. Calling now for thee. Oh, weary prodigal, come. Calling now for thee. Oh, weary prodigal, come. Patient, loving, and tenderly still the Father